UFOs are real, burgeoning, not going away. I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. Special UFO update. Filmmaker Ron James. I think you'll find this interesting. The film is called Accidental Truth, UFO Revelations. Once again, folks, I'm interviewing Ron James. It's a really cool film. I sat and watched it over the weekend and picked up the last 30 minutes this morning, right before the interview. So we'll get into that and so much more. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor. Before trying anti-aging serums or wrinkle creams, check if you're getting enough collagen first. Collagen is a protein that plays a crucial role in maintaining the health and elasticity of our skin. Without it, we may notice visible signs of aging, like fine lines and wrinkles. While collagen production naturally declines as we age, certain collagen supplements can help bring back a youthful glow like you wouldn't believe. This is why I highly recommend taking collagen. Collagen is specially formulated to enhance skin elasticity and hydration. It's made with the top 5 most powerful types of collagen that are essential for skin health, elasticity, and firmness. Folks, with only 10 grams of bioactive collagen peptides per serving, collagen is designed to make it easy to boost your collagen levels to support healthier skin. Try it today and receive 53% off, free shipping, free VIP live health and fitness coaching for life. What a great deal. And also a free new e-report titled The 14 Foods for Amazing Skin and a 60-day money-back guarantee. So folks, if you don't see it working, they'll give you your money back. Plus, you'll also help feed a hungry child, families and communities in need of healthier lives with your order through BioTrust partnership with NoKidsHungry.org. What a great company. Check it out today. Go to healthwithla.com, healthwithla.com, or please click the link right below here in our description box. Ron James, it's been a long time and you refreshed my memory off camera here. Now I'm putting it all together. Thanks for coming on the record. You know, in the film, you've interviewed what I would call the A-listers. Nick Pope, Luis Elizondo, Chris Mellon. I mean, these are the people that we see that are coming up with the information, that are basically steering the narrative. The problem I have, and this is my question to you, that right off the bat, Elizondo's military, Nick Pope is military, and so is Chris Mellon. So why should we believe anything that they say? That, in other words, let me put it to you this way, are they steering the narrative? Are they being told what to say from higher ups, in your opinion?
I think that there's a really good possibility of that. Not so much Nick Pope, but I still think once you're in this kind of community, you never stop working. And this thing that they rolled out in 2017 in the film, we call the new narrative. And if you pay attention to what Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon and even Nick Pope to a degree are saying, the reason I called this film Accidental Truth is because the truth is really coming out reading between the lines and applying your own critical thinking to what they're saying. I'm not saying believe them or disbelieve them, but what I am saying is that they give us a lot of accidental truths that they did not mean to. And that's the whole theme of the film, is that, these guys are saying a whole lot more, either by letting something slip or by what they're not saying, or by the way they're dancing around stuff. And that's where the true gem of the film is.
In 2017 on Tucker Carlson, and I know you know this, Commander David Fravor was on, former F-18 pilot, and when Tucker Carlson asked Fravor, Commander David Fravor, what do you think this tic-tac shaped object was? Without blinking an eye, Fravor looks right at the camera. Whatever this thing was not from this earth. And that's the gateway. In my opinion, that's ladder 1, the first ladder on the rung of disclosure. But since then, and I want to get into this, even though it's not in the film, since then we're climbing that ladder, going up and up. Last week we had two whistleblowers coming forward, and we had, of course, the incident in Las Vegas. So before we sort of do a dive on the film here, and I'm not going to give away the farm, folks, you need to watch this film, and we'll tell you how you can see that, because this stuff is being revealed, and you need to stay up with it. But what are your thoughts on the Vegas clip?
I'm inconclusive on that one. It's it seems to me that if they had the capability of taking video, they would have taken better video instead of these weird off the wall stuff. And that's always the way it is, right?
Oh,
LA. It's like, oh, well, I couldn't get that shot because of some stupid reason. So, it's an interesting case and it's going to unfold. But right now, I haven't seen anything that's going to make me raise a flag over it.
And I thought it was interesting also, and I get that, but having been in this for a long time like you, we know that when you take an iPhone, sometimes everything blurs. I remember talking to one witness. The craft was like 100 feet over his head, right on Pacific Coast Highway. The phone got so hot he had to drop it. So it's like they mess with stuff. The batteries will drain, all sorts of weird.
Those things do happen.
Yeah,
and But there's I saw a video of supposedly the alien standing in front of a Ring doorbell. I mean, come on, really? They should have answered the door.
pretty strange. So, in the film, I already mentioned Luis Elizondo, but you've got Richard Dolan. I mean, you've got all the A-listers for the most part, but you don't have Leslie Kean on. And I found that interesting. Why did you try to reach out to Leslie, or what's the deal with
I
that?
did, but I got Ralph Blumenthal, who's just as viable. And he's spellbinding in the film. And him and Leslie just released the story that broke about David Grush, the whistleblower. So I'm watching my film and I'm watching the things that it's telling people. And I realize that I've been told by several people, including an ex-CIA guy, that this film has kind of pushed these people up against the wall and made them realize they're going to have to talk because we're not leaving them much room. And all the guys that are popping up in the headlines, Ralph Blumenthal, Dr. Gary Nolan at the SALT conference, Tim Burchett, who is now going to be the congressman, is now going to be running this congressional hearing about David Grush. These guys are all in my film saying things that they can't get away from. And now we're seeing it explode in the media, and it's almost like publish a cast list of accidental truth, and that's who you're seeing on the news. It's really very gratifying.
No, it is. I mean, it's a real feather in your cap. You've got the A-listers, and you've got them pretty much all under one umbrella in your film. The film is titled Accidental Truth, and it's because, like you just said, they're the people that you interview, they're slipping things in that maybe they shouldn't be. Tell us one of the more startling ones that just like an aha moment for you.
Well, I think that the whole reason that I came up with the film was from my 2018 interview with Lou Elizondo. And, there were some things that he said in that interview that I, for everybody's protection, including his, I won't put out. But the coolest accidental truth, I think, in the whole movie is that I asked Lou if there was a interdimensional element to all of this. And he literally says, well, we have to look at all of it. They might be coming from outer space. They might be coming from inner space. They might be coming from inside the earth. They could be coming from any number of places. And I said, well, Lou, the only question that seems that you do have an answer to is whether or not there is an actual they. And I mean, that was like a total journalistic gotcha moment. And he goes completely still faced and thinks for a minute and backs off, and it's right there, and he didn't mind me using it. And to me, that's what good old-fashioned documentaries are supposed to be. Is you investigate. When you're interviewing people with tough questions, you ask them the tough questions, and you don't pussyfoot around. And that's what I did with this film. And some of the people I interviewed, I asked them the hard questions, including Chris Mellon about his stuff, and his answer was like off the charts.
Yeah, I remember when I got to that part of the film, I was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
It's like, Chris, careful. But I mean, these guys all in the film, except really for Dolan. Dolan's not an insider. I don't believe he is. Maybe he is. Maybe he puts up a good front.
No, I've known Rich for a long time, and in Accidental Truth, that guy's in rare form. That was Richard Dolan at his most candid and at his best. I mean, he did not hold back.
No, it was a great interview with Richard. I don't think, in other words, like there's almost like two camps. It's like Nick Pope and Lozano, Chris Mellon. I mean, their ties in with the military, and those,
Hmm.
one CIA, always CIA type of deal.
Absolutely. I
And you're always
absolutely
in.
believe
So
that.
I always take what they're saying that as a managed agenda, but
Hmm.
Dolan,
I
no,
agree.
Dolan's not tied in like that. And he's very articulate, very, very good on camera. I've never met him, but he's just wonderful on camera. And of course, let me ask you another question. The cat's out of the bag. We all realize that.
Oh yeah.
Um, where do you think? What I mean, we've had disclosure, the rungs of a ladder, cat's out of the bag. Where do you think it's going?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's going to have to be some kind of official acknowledgement. I am one of the people that believes that the 2017 rollout by Ralph Blumenthal and the emerging of the TTSA, all of that was part of this very crafted, very uh, approved method of some sort of disclosure, where we're never going to get the whole truth, because the whole truth is literally a crime against humanity, what they've done. But there was some sort of consensus that they've got to come clean with something, and so they came up with this very elaborate way to roll everything out, and then that sort of imploded a little bit. So what we're seeing is the result of this infighting between these people, and yeah, I think these guys largely are towing the line, but they also, the line is that we're going to get some sort of truth. So I think the next thing is something official. It'll come out of the hearing. I'm in Washington, D.C. I had lunch with Andre Carson 3 months ago, sat next to him for an hour. I have video of me sitting in Congressman Tim Burchett's office, a 2-camera shoot, where I tell him the whole history from Roswell all the way up until now. And MUFON has been in Washington lobbying Congress, and we've had 400 meetings with staffers and people, and we have a seat at the table on these congressional panels. We're supplying reports to the intelligence committees as we speak, once every quarter, of MUFON's collected UFO reports. So we're involved. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I know that the next wave is going to come from this flood of whistleblowers that are going to start coming forward. And right now, it's just a matter of working out the legalities, because even though they're allowed to come forward and given some sort of protection, that hasn't been quite defined how that's going to work. So it's not like, oh, you worked at Raytheon and you studied at ET craft, so now you can hold a press conference at the National Press Club and show pictures. It's not exactly going to be that easy. But we're going to see more and more people confirming what David Grush said, because it's the truth. And that's what the whole movie's about. And it just blows me away that what I made this film about and the evidence I presented is now probably just a few months away from being common knowledge among everybody. It's awesome, honestly.
Yeah, and things are definitely accelerating. I mean, someone is pushing the narrative. They handle it
Hmm.
to these people, but then you get researchers like myself. I've been doing this and studying this thing for 30 years, which is why when I got to the part where you ask Elizondo, where are they from? And he did embrace the extra interdimensional hypothesis, which is what, of course, I hold to.
Sure.
Let me ask you a gotcha question, as it were. And I ask this when I'm speaking, which is rare, at New Age or MUFON conventions. Last one I spoke at was in Vernal, Utah, and I was, with all honesty, I was shunned by many of the speakers, not all of them, but many of them, because they perceive the view that I hold to as religious. It has
Yeah.
to do with religion. It has everything to do with interdimensional entities. Is it okay, in your opinion, to implant a 5-year-old boy? Take him against his parents' will, get him on the ship and implant them. Of course, I'm speaking of Emil, which is in our Watchers series. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I don't think that that's okay. But we also have to realize that perhaps we're a very small species, and for an advanced technology, we tag fish and sharks and whales in the ocean.
I
We
know.
don't mean them any harm, but we're studying them in ways that may enable us to help them at some point. So there's could be all kinds of different reasons for this. Is it cool? No, I've seen the scars that experiencers bear.
Good.
Okay, I mean, when I'm at a MUFON place and I've got a booth and an experiencer walks up to me, I can spot them a mile away because they have this thing about them. And so, no, this is not okay. But on the other side of it, we don't really know our place in the cosmic food chain, and there could be all kinds of reasons for all kinds of things. But one thing that you bring up,
That
the perceptions are evolving. The ideas that you hold about the origin of some, if not all of these things, and traditional ufologists, all of the, no, they're from another planet. We're starting to realize that there could be a lot of answers and that we can't rule anything out. And so it's time to quit fighting over clinging to our own perceptions and opinions, and start being accepting of other people's ideas as if they may be credible, no matter what you think. Because, I think that your position, and, I've known you for 15 years, I'm familiar with it. I don't take debate with you at all.
and it's interesting. If they are interdimensional, if they are what I think they are, there's a nefarious agenda here, and it does tie back into, at least in my paradigm, ancient prophetic texts, which talk about the seed war, which talk about the mingling of the seed, and that's exactly what we're seeing with the hybrids. Now, in our films, we've had several people who were abducted, 2 women and 2 men, Karen and Angela, and then of course Al Matthews and Emil. Emil was implanted. Karen was impregnated by them 3 times, and they came and they took the children. They took the babies at the 3rd month of pregnancy. There seems to be a breeding program. Have you met any hybrids yourself? Have you been in contact? Has anyone ever come up and said, and went like this with the eye, and, their eyes shifted, whatever? Have you had any experiences like that?
I really wish I had. I have had people tell me that they're hybrids, but then when I'm like, okay, well, let's get down to the doctor and draw some DNA, then all of a sudden that's not happening. I think that that if there is a hybridization program, people like Dr. Jacobs talks about how, there's hybrid aliens living in apartments and brainwashing people for their banking information so they don't have to pay rent. It's like a little off the charts. If there is a hybridization program, chances are it's being carried off somewhere else where these hybrids are, because I think that if there was a big major change to the human genome, we wouldn't all look like humans still. There'd start to be some obvious evidence that there was a split off. So I don't know. To answer your question, nobody's ever walked up to me and convinced me that they were a reptile or a hybrid.
Yeah, I haven't had that either. Bob Lazar was, made big news, of course, in the UFO community. I know that Stanton Friedman sort of poo-pooed him, and that's fine for Stanton. He's not around to defend himself anymore. I've always believed Lazar's story, and Lazar talked about back engineering the craft. This is back in the 90s. So
Yes.
now fast forward to 2023, the whistleblower coming out last week, basically saying that we've got craft that we're back engineering. Well, Lazar said that in the 90s. Did you try to get Lazar in the film, or was that, I know he's very standoffish, but did you give it a shot anyway?
I really wanted the film to be completely evidence-based. Virtually every claim we made is backed up by some form of official government documentation, or corroborating witness testimony. And so the Lazar story is, even though I personally think that there's something to it, and I don't think he's a liar, the Lazar story is controversial and it's been done. And so I wanted to present as much new stuff as I could, even going back in a history lesson back to Roswell. I think I produced new information, and I wanted to make sure that it was evidence-based. I tried to make this as if I was an attorney putting the case before a jury, and I didn't want to bring in anything that was just people waving their hands and saying this is this, because there's too many UFO films like that. And I wanted Accidental Truth to be a historical document. And so I was very careful about what I chose to cover. And there's a lot of stuff that ended up on the edit room floor.
Always does.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, pretty much in the film, this is a case for this. And the Debrief magazine said it's the best case yet that's ever been presented in a film.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, it's very methodical. And like I say, you've got all the A-listers. There seems to be a shadow government. What I mean by that, you've got congressmen and senators and even presidents that have no idea. They're not briefed on what's going on. So you've got this group of people. I call them the old guard. The old guard was in the Roswell era. They came out with the truth. We have a flying disc, and then 24 hours later, they and you know the story with Jesse Marcel Sr. and they
Sure.
disparage him, make him look like a fool. But now the new guard, all the old guard is dead, but new guard is there, and they're allowing this to come out. So is there a government within a government? I mean, because you know the whole thing with Congress is, in my opinion, sort of like a dog and pony show. These guys have no idea.
It has been so far, but you know, we are educating our political people. We're, you know, I'm going to release that film with me and Burchett. There's not going to be any question left as to whether or not Congress is being told by the UFO community what's going on. And you know, like I said, I sat next to Andre Carson, who led that hearing, which was a bit of a dog and pony show, and I called him on it. But I called him on it in the film, and I called him on it when I was sitting with him. But he knows. So, but in the film, we take the position that way back in the 40s when this all happened, it was sequestered away, probably by a group similar to, or even MJ12,
Right.
and a very small group that was distributing stuff out through industry and building these compartments, was managing this and accountable to nobody except maybe the president. And then over years, these guys got deeper and deeper, more and more corrupt. This stuff ended up in private industry where people don't want to share what they have.
Right.
We've got video in there of appearing that a stealth bomber appears to be sealing off parts of itself. It's just bizarre. And that comes from the Roswell memory metal idea. So over the years, institutional memory is completely gone. Evidence has been destroyed. I sadly have come to that conclusion. And if there's anybody that still has the bird's eye view of everything, it's information that's been passed on. There's no original OGs out there that know the whole story. And like I said, institutional memory is gone. It's been sequestered so deep that we may never get the truth. But these very people also understand that sooner or later humanity has to know what's going on. Well, I mean, so they've invented the whole new story.
I mean, you can't the old cliche, but you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. No. You can't. I mean, this thing is out. People, what amazes me is the ambivalence of the American people for the most part. I mean, you know, you got whistleblowers last week, 2 of them that came out. And, you know, I got some emails, a flurry of emails from people, but it's not like the phone's ringing off the hook. Oh my gosh, did you see this?
You know, we're dealing with a whole generation that grew up on Ancient Aliens.
Exactly.
If you were to go out into the street and ask 10 people if they believe that there's non-human intelligence and the government's lying about it, almost all of them are going to say yes, and the ones that don't say yes are uneducated. Literally, they're not paying attention to the facts. So we've got a population that's not so much ambivalent, but we're jaded. We know we're being lied to. We don't like being lied to, but we know there's nothing we can do about it, and they're going to tell us what we need to know when we need to know it. And I think most people are resigned to that.
Let me ask you something. The wild card here, and you didn't really cover this in the film. In other words, you're covering it from the Chris Mellons, Luis Elizondo, and others in the film, obviously, Nick Pope, Richard Dolan, and others. And again, it's the A-listers. The wild card, I'm going to throw this at you in just a second. The wild card is them. What if they decide to reveal themselves? Your thoughts?
I think that ultimately they are the ones that have the choice, because they could override any government, any secret program, anything, anytime they wanted. Exactly. And so, and who knows, maybe they are working and pulling the strings on disclosure. And that's a whole other layer to this that's quite possible. But ultimately, rather, we want to think that it's being withheld by the government, or that somebody else is in control. They, whoever they are, and there's probably a lot of different theys, they're the ones ultimately that could do it anytime they want. So they're the ones that hold the trump card for sure.
And let me ask you this: why, in your opinion, haven't they done it?
I can only speculate, and as a media relations director for MUFON, I have to stick with what we can make a good case for. But personally, I think that we're under some kind of that at some point us as a civilization showed enough merit to warrant protection and to be left alone to develop. There's something like the Star Trek Prime Directive almost.
Right, I get
And
it.
so I think that we're being allowed to self-determine. And if we make it, we're going to be invited into a galactic family. And if we don't make it, we're going to get mowed under like cosmic manure. And I don't think that there's a whole lot of ambivalence either way. It's up to us. And so there's different factions probably within this galactic group that want to see different outcomes happen. But ultimately, it's up to us to not destroy ourselves and become worthy of being a peaceful citizen in a galactic community. And if we do that, the future of humanity is absolutely awesome. And if we don't do that, the future of humanity's been portrayed in some really horrible ways.
What's your opinion? I'm down to like the 5-minute mark because I'm not going to give away the farm here, folks. You're going to have to. You need to
Oh
watch.
yeah, watch the movie. It's
You need to watch
it's
the
totally
film.
cool.
Absolutely. We'll get into how people can do that.
Sure.
Ancient prophetic texts warn of what we're seeing. I mean, Jesus says,
Mhm.
2,000 years old, men faint from fear from what's coming upon the earth. He says things like, it'll be like the days of Noah when I return, talking about the seed war. There's an ancient prophetic text, and I realize this isn't your bailiwick. I just want to get your thoughts on it. But in Daniel, 2,500-year-old prophetic text, their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but there's no marriage contract, which, you start putting all this in the cosmic blender. This is what we're seeing with the breeding program, with the taking of sperm from the men over from the women. And that's, our film deals, the films I make deal from
Mhm.
that perspective, which is a little different than your perspective, which is fine, but we can talk about it, and that's what we're doing. But when you hear those prophecies, which are thousands of years old, what's your take on that? Because I mean, there's a warning in the biblical prophetic narrative that, in my opinion, and having studied this for literally decades, it just dovetails together. Your thoughts?
I wholeheartedly agree with you. If anybody, whether they're a Christian or a believer or not, has got to be willing to admit that what is written as prophecies in the Bible seem to be unfolding almost verbatim, and that's an objective standpoint. So I do like to think that timelines are potentially changeable, and that if we didn't run down this road, that there's ways to avert this total calamity for humanity. I would like to think that, but I'm not seeing a lot of evidence that we're going to get the collective wisdom and self-control to pull it off. It would be good, but no, I mean, you've hit the nail right on the head, and so prophetic things are unfolding. And maybe that's why we're getting more and more of this disclosure, because it's part of what is going to be a coming crescendo.
I've got 50 more questions. We could go on for hours on this, and I'm not going to do it.
We could,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not going to do it, but I'm not, because people need to see the film. And as a filmmaker, I know what that's like. You pour your life into it, and some people want everything for free, but then you get, I think, the majority of fair-minded people that realize that, wow, Ron's put a lot of time into this. I'm going to support what he does. How can we do that? How can we watch the film?
So it's I forgot to mention it's narrated by Matthew Modine. He'll get mad at me if I don't tell him that, but he did such a great job.
You did a
You
great
can
job.
find it on Amazon Prime. You can find it on Apple iTunes, Google Play, Microsoft, Redbox, Crackle, any of the places where you get the movie. And you can also find a directory of where you can get it at the film's website, which is accidentaltruths.com, accidentaltruths.com. And then, of course, the trailer's on YouTube, and it's out there. But yeah, I mean, it's not expensive to rent, and I did spend a lot of money and a lot of time making it, so I'd like to at least break even. But it's definitely if I never make another UFO film again, I think I did a good job with this.
Oh, you
one.
did a great job. Hats off to you. Again, folks, Accidental Truth, Ron James, you need to check it out. Accidentaltruths with an S.com. Accidentaltruths with an S.com. Check it out. You need to watch it. There's an incredible amount of information there, and it's things are heating up. Ron, thanks so much for coming on the record. Really appreciate it.
13 awards for this film, and it's only been out for 2 months.
I am envious, sir. I am really envious.
LA, it's so great to talk to you. I consider you a friend. We go back a long way. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. Folks, that's it. Remember, UFOs are real, burgeoning, not going away. Check it out. We'll be back tomorrow with another show for you.